Our brain is being rewired right now. Not as a metaphor, literally. The neural pathways that govern your attention, your motivation, your ability to focus, and feel genuine satisfaction are being restructured every single day by the inputs you're feeding them. And here is what makes that worth understanding. You didn't consciously choose this. It's happening in the background, gradually, quietly. And most people won't recognize the effects until they are already deeply established. Today, we are going to look at exactly what is happening inside your brain, why it matters more than most people realize, and what the evidence says you can do about it. OST people, when they notice they can't concentrate, tell themselves they just need to be more disciplined. They silence their phone for an hour. They try harder. And then they drift back and feel worse about themselves for it. What they don't realize is that this is not a discipline problem. This is neurological adaptation, and those are very different things. Your brain operates according to a principle called neuroplasticity, the capacity to reorganize its structure and function in response to experience. This is one of the most remarkable properties of the human brain, and it is the foundation of learning, memory, and recovery from injury. But neuroplasticity is not selective. It does not optimize for what is good for you. It optimizes for what you are repeatedly exposed to. And in the current digital environment, what most of us are repeatedly exposed to is a level of stimulation that the human brain did not evolve to handle. The adaptation that follows is real, measurable, and consequential. To understand what's happening, you need to understand dopamine, because dopamine is at the center of all of it. Dopamine is frequently described as the brain's pleasure chemical, but that description is incomplete, and the distinction matters. Dopamine is not primarily a pleasure signal. It is an anticipation and motivation signal. Neuroscientist Dr. Kent Berridge, whose research has been foundational in this area, identified the distinction between wanting and liking in the brain, and dopamine governs wanting. It is the neurochemical that drives you toward things, that creates the sensation of seeking, pursuing, and reaching. When dopamine is functioning well, it is what gets you out of bed with a sense of purpose. It sustains effort through difficulty. It registers genuine reward when you finish something meaningful. It is, in the most literal sense, the biological engine of motivation. Now here is where the problem develops. Every notification you receive, every scroll through a feed, every short video, every moment of social validation, these are not neutral events in your brain. Each one produces a small dopamine pulse, a brief spike of novelty and anticipation. And your brain, shaped by millions of years of evolution to treat these signals as highly meaningful, responds to them accordingly. It engages. It wants more. No single spike is the problem. The problem is the cumulative volume. Research published in journals including Nature Neuroscience and Neuron has documented how chronic overstimulation of the dopamine system leads to receptor downregulation, meaning the brain physically reduces the sensitivity of its own dopamine receptors in response to excessive activation. The system adapts to protect itself from overload, and that adaptation has consequences that extend far beyond your phone use. And this is where the real problem begins. Your brain is constantly seeking homeostasis, a state of biological balance. When it is exposed to repeated, excessive dopamine stimulation, it doesn't simply accept that new elevated state. It compensates by reducing receptor sensitivity and lowering baseline dopamine tone. It recalibrates downward in order to restore equilibrium. This is textbook neuroscience, the same mechanism that underlies tolerance in addiction, and that has been documented in the context of behavioral stimulation as well as chemical. But here is what that recalibration means in practice. When your dopamine baseline drops, ordinary life becomes less engaging. Not because ordinary life has changed, but because your brain's capacity to find reward and meaning in it has been chemically diminished. The gap widens between the level of stimulation your brain has adapted to and the stimulation that real, unmediated life provides. And you feel that gap as restlessness, as low-grade boredom, as a persistent sense that nothing quite delivers what it used to. This is not a character flaw. This is neurological adaptation to an overstimulating environment. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The design of the environment is the problem. So what does a lower dopamine baseline actually feel like in daily life? Most people are living it. They simply haven't identified the cause. Work that once felt engaging begins to feel tedious. Creative tasks that you used to approach with energy now require enormous effort just to begin. You sit down to do something that matters, a project, a difficult email, a conversation that requires real presence. And within minutes, your attention has moved somewhere else. Not by choice, exactly. By reflex. Focus becomes unreliable. You can follow fast-moving, algorithmically curated content for hours without effort. But sustained, deliberate cognitive work, reading, writing, solving a complex problem, thinking through something that doesn't resolve quickly, starts to feel disproportionately difficult. The capacity for deep thinking hasn't disappeared. The ability to initiate and sustain it has been disrupted. Motivation flattens, and not in an obvious or dramatic way. It presents as a mild but persistent reluctance to start things. A quiet preference for the easier option. A sense that activities which used to feel rewarding no longer quite deliver. And crucially, the more time spent in high-stimulation environments, the more these effects compound. Because each session reinforces the same neural adaptation that produced them in the first place. Beyond motivation and mood, there is a structural change happening in how your brain manages attention. And this one has implications that extend well beyond productivity. Attention is not simply willpower. It is a neurological function, supported by specific brain circuits. Most critically, the prefrontal cortex, which governs executive function, impulse control, working memory, and the capacity to hold a goal in mind while filtering out distraction. Research from neuroscientists, including Dr. Michael Merzenich and Dr. Adam Gazzaley, has documented that these circuits are use-dependent, meaning they strengthen with consistent practice and weaken without it. When we consistently bypass sustained attention in favor of rapid context switching, we are effectively under-exercising the very neural architecture that makes deep thinking possible. Simultaneously, the brain's threshold for what registers as sufficiently engaging continues to rise. Boredom, which is simply the experience of low external stimulation, becomes increasingly intolerable because the nervous system has adapted to expect a level of input that ordinary life does not naturally provide. This is why many people find that activities they once genuinely enjoyed, reading a long book, having an unhurried conversation, sitting in nature, begin to feel slow, flat, or unsatisfying. The activities have not changed. The brain's ability to receive and appreciate them has. It is worth being precise about something, because it changes how you think about all of this. The digital environments most of us inhabit daily, social media platforms, streaming services, algorithmically curated content feeds, are not neutral tools. They are systems engineered with considerable technical sophistication to maximize the time you spend inside them. The variable reward structure of infinite scroll which mirrors the same intermittent reinforcement schedules used in behavioral research, is not accidental design. It is intentional. The autoplay feature that removes the moment of conscious decision between one piece of content and the next. The notification system's calibrated to bring you back at precisely the right interval. The social validation loops that make disengagement feel like a social cost. Former insiders from major technology companies, including early Facebook product leaders, have been public about the fact that these mechanisms were designed with an understanding of how the brain's reward system works and were optimized to exploit it. Your brain is not simply failing to resist a neutral environment. It is engaging with systems built specifically to be difficult to disengage from. This is not a reason for outrage. It is a reason for clarity. Because when you understand that your attention is being actively competed for by sophisticated, well-resourced systems, you can begin to make more deliberate choices about what you expose your brain to. The biology that created this problem is also the path out of it. Neuroplasticity works in both directions. Dopamine receptors can resensitize. Prefrontal circuits can be rebuilt. Attention can be recovered. But it requires a different input environment, deliberately, consistently, over time. Here is what the evidence supports. First, deliberate stimulation reduction. This doesn't mean eliminating technology. It means creating daily periods of genuine non-consumption. No phone, no background content, no passive input. Start with 1 hour. The discomfort you feel in that hour is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that recalibration has begun. Second, structured, protected focus blocks. Choose one cognitively demanding task each day and give it your full, uninterrupted attention for a defined period, even 20 to 30 minutes. Research on deliberate practice and attentional training consistently shows that regular engagement and sustained focus begins to restore the prefrontal circuits that chronic distraction has weakened. Third, a deliberate relationship with boredom. Boredom is not wasted time. It is neurologically active time. When the brain is not being driven by external input, the default mode network engages, the circuit responsible for creativity, self-reflection, perspective-taking, and the integration of complex ideas. This is the network that generates insight. Most people never access it anymore because they eliminate boredom the moment it appears. That elimination has a cognitive cost. Fourth, protecting the first hour of your morning before your brain has been exposed to any external stimulation. It is in its highest quality state for intentional thought. What you expose it to in that window sets the neurological tone for everything that follows. Guard it. Our brain is plastic. It changes in response to its environment. That has always been true, and it will always be true. The question is not whether your brain is being shaped by your inputs. It is, continuously. The question is whether that process is happening with your awareness and your participation, or whether it is being driven entirely by systems designed to capture your attention for someone else's benefit. Neuroscience is clear on this. Sustained, intentional exposure to low stimulation, high-depth environments rebuilds the very capacities that overstimulation erodes. It is not a quick process, but it is a real one. You have more agency over this than the current environment wants you to believe. And that agency starts with understanding exactly what is happening, which is what you now do.